One last thing. Kind Scotland, kind party, come on!
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the weekly Dartscast in association with Darts Corner. I'm Alex Moss and joining me as always my co-host, the Darts statistician, I'm guessing a rather jubilant American cricket fan right now, Burton DeWitt. How are you doing?
Yeah, it almost, I can't say almost beat India, but we were in with a chance. We were 14 runs ahead of where they were with 5 overs to go, but then a crucial 5-run penalty, and it was never the same after that. But I'm over the moon with our performances so far. Although you might be speaking a little bit incorrectly when you said joined, as always, as I won't be here the next 2 weeks. So as usual, but I'm doing fine. How are you, Alex?
Glad to hear it. Yeah, I'm doing all right here, thank you. I can't say I've really followed the cricket myself, but I do know that your lot are doing much better than England. But the Euros, that's just around the corner, and I do fancy England to outperform the US in that one. Anyway, lots to get to on the show this week. We are out slightly later this week as there has been Pro Tours going on during the week in Germany. We're going to be chatting about them a little bit later on. But before we do, let's rewind to the weekend and the World Series in Denmark. Gerwyn Price picking up the Nordic Darts Masters title, his first title of 2024 and his first on a stage in the PDC since the World Cup in June of last year. A 36th career title in the PDC for the Iceman, and it brings us on to our question of the week, sponsored by Condor Darts. Where do you rank Gerwyn Price on the best darts players of all time list? And our options are 1 to 10, 11 to 20, 21 to 30, or 31 and below. What are you going with?
It's amazing what a difference a week makes, because hopefully everyone here remembers last week's episode. But if you don't, I'll read the question from the spreadsheet. Gerwyn Price's hunt for his next single stage title continues. He says he's struggling to get over the winning line. What's missing from his game to get him over that line? And here we are just a week later, and we're asking, is he in the top 10 of all time? Because he's crossed that line. In a rematch of the final from just the weekend before in New York City, out in Copenhagen, Gerwyn Price turns the tide and flips the script, whatever cliche you want, and beats Rob Cross in the final. He does, in fact, cross that line. I can't say that I was surprised by it because, well, if you've listened to last week's show, and again, you probably should have, and if you didn't, there's always time to go back. It's not like it's dated. Everything I said ended up being right. It was just that Gerwyn Price was fading off a little bit in semifinals and finals. And I went through the statistics over the course of the year and how much below his seasonal average he was in semifinals and finals. And that had been the difference. But he was playing as well up until that point, if not better than everyone else. He was playing in earlier rounds better than everyone other than the two Lukes and Gary Anderson this year. And it was more of the same, surprisingly, this past week in Copenhagen. The only difference being it was good enough. He averaged nearly 103 in his first round. He averaged nearly 105 in the quarterfinals, but then he dropped off to an 86 against Michael Smith, 96.5 against Rob Cross, below that 98, 99 that he's been averaging overall over the course of the season. But he won those matches. Eventually, he was going to win one of those. And now that he has the title under his belt, I think the performances in semifinals and finals will start matching. The pressure won't be building like it has. If he can add a few more big stage titles this year, I think the answer to the question becomes top 10 of all time. Because I went through the history of darts, as obviously I know you did, and I was trying to figure out who would I say for sure are ahead of Gerwyn Price. And I came up with 9 names, plus 2 female players, but it's tough to compare because, if you look at actual performances, I don't think Trina Gulliver or Lisa Ashton are in the same league, at least overall, as Gerwyn Price. But if you factor in achievements, they unquestionably have achieved more. So I'll throw them aside. I came up with 9 names: Phil Taylor, Michael Van Gerwen, Gary Anderson, Eric Bristow, and I should say this is in no particular order: Raymond Van Barneveld, James Wade, John Lowe, Jockey Wilson, and Peter Wright. That unquestionably, I think, are ahead of Gerwyn. He's closing in on some of them. He's not that far behind Peter Wright. He's not that far behind James Wade. I would say. But I would still say they're unquestionably ahead of him because of the longevity that they've had and their overall CVs. But then there's a lot of players who I don't know who I'd put ahead. Would I put John Part ahead of Gerwyn Price? I might not. I think an argument can be made either way. Bob Anderson, Rod Harrington, Alan Warner-Little, Martin Adams, all of those players, I think arguments can be made either way. I think you could put Gerwyn Price at number 10. At least I don't see a 10th player who undoubtedly I would put ahead of him. But I think there's about 5 or 6 players that are right about the same. So I'm going to say that at least one of those right now is probably still ahead of Gezi, so I put him in that second 10. But it's not that far off from the first 10. What he has accomplished and what is no longer just a short period of time, it's now been since his first major, nearly 6 years, from his first major final, over 7 years. What he has done over not a long period of time, but an extended period, unquestionably, he puts him in that conversation, having won 7 majors, having won 2 World Series titles now and making it to 4 other finals, having won 2 World Cup of Darts, having won more European Tour titles than almost anyone, being the only person ever to sweep the Euro Tour in a given year, granted it was only 2 events, and having won a Euro Tour event in 6 consecutive years, still has a chance to make that 7 in a row. That is the stuff of all-time greats. I don't think he's top 10 quite yet, but he's in that conversation for number 10 all time. And by the end of the year, he might not just be in the top 10 all time. He might have caught James Wade. He might have caught Peter Wright. And we're talking about a player who's moving towards the top 5 if he keeps this up for another 3 or 4 years.
Well, before I give my own thoughts on this question, I'll just fill you in with what our listeners are saying on social media, and many of them agreeing with you, Burton. 63%, the overwhelming majority going with that 11 to 20 bracket. 23% are going with top 10. They think Gerwyn Price is already there. 12% going 21 to 30, and 3% going with 31 or under. And a few of our listeners getting in touch. Jonas saying he's 14th, very precise there. Carter saying Price has to win 2 world titles to be in the top 10. He's currently on 1. Robin, extra marks for showing you're working out here, Robin. He's put together his top 20 list based on accomplishments alone. He's got Price at 12 on his list. And as for my view on where Gerwyn Price sits on the Dartscope debate, I'll just quickly touch on his latest title of the weekend. And with all due respect to the World Series events, we know the purpose they have. It is to bring the top players to different parts of the world, to try and grow the game, the interest in that top level professional tour that we've got with the PDC. Winning these titles, what does it do in terms of the best of all time debate? Well, for me, it doesn't move the needle too much. But for Gerwyn Price right now, in this moment in time, you could see just how pleased he was to win that title in Copenhagen on Saturday night. And as we mentioned at the start of the show, a first title on a stage in a year is the longest run that he's been on without tasting success in front of a crowd or on TV. You go back to that first Euro Tour win he had in 2018. That was closely followed by that first major you mentioned, the Grand Slam. And he has been racking up the trophies on a fairly regular basis since then. There's been a few dry spells, 6 months, 8 months, but none as long as the one that he's just ended at the weekend. So it was probably a feeling more of relief than jubilation for Price. And, you know, he said after finishing runner-up in New York the previous week about wanting to get that next win to build that confidence again. And we know how dangerous Gerwyn Price can be when he is full of confidence. And we know he's won bigger titles in his career, but breaking that dry spell, it could be that catalyst to go on and win another major title or 2 majors during the rest of the season, because there's going to be plenty of opportunities, plenty of tournaments coming up in this second half of the year for him to try and add to that tally that he's got at the moment. But I think, like Carter said, if he goes on and becomes a 2-time world champion in January, I think you really do open up a serious debate about him being in that top 10. But right now, like you, I think he is in that next rung of players. I think he is underneath that top 10 at the moment. So I'm going to go with that 11 to 20 bracket, and I'd have to give it more thought on the exact placement, but a rough estimate, I think I'd put Price around that 13 to 16 range, somewhere around that. But as we saw at the weekend, he's back winning titles, and if he does add to that major tally, then there's no reason why he can't be a serious contender for that top 10.
Well, let's change gears a little bit and go from talking about the World Series to talking about the Challenge Tour, because that also was up this past weekend. Across the 5 events, 4 different winners, although Christian Kist not just won 2, but he did the double on a single day. A very rare feat, although becoming more common. Also hit a 9-darter. But what did you make of the weekend's action?
You briefly touched on it about it becoming quite a popular achievement these days for players to win 2 Challenge Tour titles on the same day. Before Scott Williams, he had that dream first day on the Challenge Tour in 2022, winning the first 2 titles of the season. You had to go back to 2014 for the last time that someone had gone back-to-back on the Challenge Tour on the same day. And since Scott, we've seen it with Barry Van Peer last year, and now this year Andy Bolton and Christian Kist have both done it. And you've got to tip your hat to Christian Kist, though, because we all know about the injury problems that he's had over the years. It has really hampered his game and held him back from going on to achieve some big things in the PDC, because he made that switch over from the BDO, having won the Lakeside. He was a relative unknown when he won the Lakeside, but come over to the PDC, qualified for a lot of the major events, the Matchplay, the Grand Prix, made major quarterfinals. I don't think he made the top 32 in the end. I might be wrong on that. He might have just got in there. But Christian Kist, he was always a player that I admired. And it was sad to see him drop off the tour and into the darting wilderness for a while. But he has come back the last few years. And there's been signs that he is going to get back on the tour before long with that tour card. And he's been close as well last year on the Challenge Tour. That last weekend, he was right in contention to get there and ended up missing out. These 2 titles on Friday has put him in pole position for a tour card again on the Challenge Tour. But the most important thing for me with Kist from the weekend is the stamina, winning those 2 titles on the same day, given his injury problems, not just winning the titles, but to be able to keep that form going for such a long day. That's got to be a huge confidence booster for him, that he knows he's got the game, but he's also got everything else behind him that can help him go on to achieve these things and get back to where he was before. And okay, the next day he went out in the first round in the first event, but then he went on to have a good run in the second one, getting to a semi-final. So good signs for him. And Connor Scott, the other winner I want to mention, okay, he's a long-time friend of the show, the weekly Dartscast originals. I know there's a few out there. They'll remember him being on our very first episode way back in January 2017. And even he wouldn't have had as memorable weeks on the Oki since then as he did last week, winning his first PDC title on Saturday, 4 ton plus averages in a row, including that 109. That was from the last 32 to the semi-finals. And you might have seen on social media as well, away from the Challenge Tour, winning the British pentathlon on the Thursday, 2 days earlier, and throwing 4 180s in a row in a leg of 1001. And we had Connor on the show recently after he won the Denmark Open. It got him a automatic spot at Lakeside in December, but after the weekend, £300 off the tour card spots on the Challenge Tour, he might have to give up that Lakeside return and think about going back to Ali Pali instead, and right in the mix for that, and also getting his tour card back.
Well, I too have to talk about Christian Kist, and it's part of it, we don't know which Christian Kist we're going to get, and a lot of that has historically had to do with injuries. But even when you take away the injury factor, he's been a player that has peaks and troughs, and his peaks are very, very high, and his troughs are very, very low. And he disappears for extended periods of time and then comes back like we've never seen him before. And you can even look back to last year. At one point, there was a potentiality that he was going to win his tour card through getting into the top 64. He was playing well enough and putting himself in that position to qualify for all the televised events, and all it would take was a couple wins in a few of them, assuming he'd kept up his form, and he might have gotten in the top 64 just through his performances over the course of a year. It didn't happen because he fell off, and he kept falling. And over the first 2 weekends of the Challenge Tour, he only cracked 90 in his averages once. His last 11 matches he played across the last 7 events, he didn't crack 85 in a single one of those. He barely even cracked 80 in many of them. And it wasn't just looking nothing like the player who was an outside chance to get in the top 64 at the end of last year. He wasn't looking like a player who was even good enough at the Challenge Tour. And then all of a sudden this weekend, everything changed. And across the space of the 5 events, he won 2 titles, made another semifinal where he went out to the eventual winner. You mentioned, he lost first round in 2 of the last 3 events, but one of them he had a difficult draw against Jimmy Vanchi, who's been one of the players that's come alive in the Modus series as of late. So it was a very difficult draw. I don't know how to describe just how good he was. 25 matches across the 5 events. In those 25, in 19 of them, he was above what is now his seasonal average. He was above what was then his seasonal average entering this in every single one of those matches. If you go back to what his seasonal average was after the first 2 Challenge Tour weekends, all 25 matches this past weekend were higher than that. 19 of them were still higher than what his average is, even factoring in this weekend. Of the 6 matches that weren't, 4 of them he was less than a point below his seasonal average. So 23 of the 25 matches he was within a point, if not higher than his seasonal average. 14 of the 25 matches he was 5 points above his seasonal average. That's an average of at least 92 in more than half the matches. If you're wondering how many people have averaged 92 so far this year in the Challenge Tour, it's just that other person you mentioned, Connor Scott. So in more than half of his matches, he was doing better than anyone has been doing on the Challenge Tour all year. That's the weekend that Christian Kist had. That's the player he can be when he's playing at his best, or playing anywhere near his best like he was this weekend. It was an absolutely phenomenal performance, and I don't feel the need to talk about anyone else, because I don't think anyone deserves to have the attention taken away from Christian Kist, especially when you factor in how poor he had been the first 2 weekends. If this is where Christian Kist's game is right now, he's going to win a tour card. The question, though, as it always is where will Christian Kist's game be in the next weekend or the weekend after that? Because if you're able to guess that, you're going to make a lot of money, because we've labeled many people the handicapper's nightmare, but any handicapper does not have nightmares about Christian Kist. They just decide not to bet.
Well, there you go. I think we've got ourselves a new handicapper's nightmare, and we've also had a Christian Kist appreciation minute. So always bringing you new things on the show. And let's bring in our first guest on this week's show. He's a new guest as well. Here's our chat with the Polish qualifier for last year's Poland Darts Masters. He's one of Poland's top darts coaches as well. Here's our chat with Lukasz Waclawski. I'm pleased to say we're joined by last year's Polish qualifier for the Poland Darts Masters, Lukasz Waclawski. Thanks for the time, Lukasz. How are you doing?
Hi, Alex. Great to be here. It's a wonderful evening and great week ahead. So, looking forward to all that.
Well, it's great to have you on. We're talking just a few days before the second staging of the Poland Darts Masters, a new venue this year. We believe a crowd of 12,000 expected. What's the excitement like in Poland for the World Series to return this weekend?
Wow, we are all looking forward to this. All darters and all supporters of darts in Poland. Yeah, it's going to be a great event. The venue, as you said, it's a big one. Last year it was Torwar in Warsaw, which was like 5,000 perhaps. Now it's not less than 8,000, and it might reach 12,000 in a bit. So it's going to be amazing. Like Premier League or whatever happens in darts will be here. All those emotions. I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be a special atmosphere. Well, let's rewind almost 12 months ago now, the first Poland Darts Masters. You were up on that stage playing after winning the Polish qualifier. What was that whole experience like, getting to play in that first event and in front of a home crowd who were chanting your name as well?
Well, it was simply amazing, I can tell you. It was a huge experience for me. I won the qualifier like 5 days before the main event. So I didn't have much time to get ready for that, and nobody's ever ready for things like that. I believe going out to the big stage for the first time was an amazing feeling. And during the days of preparation, I remember this roller coaster of emotions, like panic mode and euphoric mode were switching very quickly. Suddenly all my darts became, heavy, and I knew that every dart I play now, it will be then shown on a big screen when I play on the stage. So I was really under some pressure, but I really prepared well for that. I managed to set it all up properly and create a good mindset, and I'm really proud of myself the way I presented on stage. And of course, as you mentioned, the crowd, all the support, it was all just taking me away to the very special places, and I was feeling great. And I believe I gave quite a good game to Gerwyn, and we had a good time on stage. Yeah, amazing feeling.
As you say, nothing can really prepare you for that first time playing on a big stage, but just touching on that qualifier that you won, because I think there was around 175 players in it, there was only one spot up for grabs and you won it, so that must have given you some confidence winning a tournament like that.
Yes, it did give me confidence, but you can't be never confident enough when you're going to the big stage. I think it's something totally different, like in new place in mind and space. So yeah, but going through the strong field of Polish players was great, and I feel really good. These are these moments when you feel that everything is right, and that was one of those moments, and I was really happy to have won. I won it on Saturday. On Sunday, I took a day off, and from Monday the preparation started. And I mentioned some of these parts of my preparation, previous question. Yeah. And
we've got to mention as well your choice of walk-on song, Elvis Presley Hound Dog, your darts nickname The Hound. Where does that come from?
My whole life has gone to the dogs. Yeah, I've been with dogs my whole life, my professional life, and private life as well. So this is where it comes from, really. I used to work for a big company, a manufacturer of pet food first, then I changed my ways and became a dog trainer. For several years I trained dogs and their owners. And now I also work in nutrition. We are distributing very nice pet food. So it's the dogs all the time. So the hound is very natural, and I really love this nickname. I like it. It suits me a lot. And the hound dog is like natural progression, right? It's a very nice piece to listen to and have fun. And I wanted people to have fun in the whole, yeah.
Yeah, it was a great choice of song, and that was the World Series last year, but you've obviously been playing darts a lot longer than that. This is the first time we've had you on our podcast, and with our guests we like to take it right back to where it all began. So how did you first get introduced to darts?
Oh, it's like past centuries, Alex. It all started for me in 1998, really. I was 18 at the time, and a friend of mine in my hometown, Iława, he had a dartboard. It was an old, plastic, noisy dartboard, like the cheapest one you can get, but it was the only dartboard we could get in our town. So I went to his place and we were playing darts, and I got so much into it, like right away, that even when I didn't have my own dartboard at my home, so what I did is I took a sweater my mother made for me, and I just hang it on the bookshelf, spread it on the bookshelf, put some pins on it, and I measured the distance, and I started throwing darts at the sweater. You can imagine, these were my first weeks of training, and it sort of showed my devotion and motivation right away, and so it stayed with me for many years. Of course, I think like for many players out there, it's always love and hate relationship. I had like a few years break from darts, but from some 10 years I'm in it, and I feel good and calm, and I'm doing what I can the best.
And I was reading earlier as well, you played for the Warsaw Sharks team alongside a certain Krzysztof Ratajski. Tell us a little bit about that, and I'm guessing your team did pretty well. They had a lot of success together.
Yeah, I mean, Warsaw Sharks, we played with Krzysztof just as he started his PDC journey, so there weren't many situations when we could play, but I always, enjoy like playing with or against player of that caliber, so that was great. Our team then changed a little bit, and we created a Neo Darts team, and now we have Karolina Ratajska on our team, the wife of Krzysztof, so everything stayed within the family. I also played with Krzysztof in soft tip European Championships. We won the championship in Slovakia. That was great. Slovenia, sorry. That was a great did it for the first time for the Polish team. And we had Krzysztof Ratajski on the team, Sebastian Białewski. I was there, Sebastian Steyer, and other Polish players, Tomek Michalski, Mateusz. Yeah, we did achieve some good things with Krzysztof on the team as well. But it's always great to be around a player like that. I always try to get as much as I can from this situation. As I mentioned, playing with or against a player like that, you can always learn.
What was the darts scene in Poland like when you first started playing? Was it more focused on soft tip or steel tip, and how has that changed over the years?
It was soft tip all the way. It was soft tip for many, many years. But you must know that we played soft tip, but it was on a board that was sized as a standard Bristol board, because I feel that when we talk about soft tip darts, people usually think about the bull shooter, which is American version of the soft tip. So in Poland we did have both, and I played mainly. I played both of them. So it was mainly soft tip, and then together with Maciej Horbiński, after some years of struggle with the soft tip, we created Polish Darts Organization and went into this classical version and joined the WDF, and then it all started and all took off from there.
Well, you mentioned the Polish Darts Organisation. One of your big achievements playing in Poland came in 2017 when you won the national finals of the Polish Super League. What did that win mean to you at the time?
Well, that was the first win of mine on the national level. I was really happy, and proud. Everyone was there. Every top player in Poland was there, and I managed to win this tournament. It gave me the kick, and confirmation that I'm heading in a good direction. Nothing I thought of. I was not planning to win the tournament. That's also the interesting part. This is what I'm working now mentally myself and with the players also. Just not think about results, but about certain behaviors and what we can get from there. So yeah, it gives me the power. Only after the final, I was informed that it was also quite good level, like 87 average, if I remember right. So it was decent game. One of those games when I feel like you can throw a chair at me and nothing would happen, right? My opponent played a 10 darter first, great leg, and I was just okay. Let's start another leg. I congratulated, and we played. I started with 3-1-40. So that was a really good game. I remember the years passed, but I still remember that. So that was a good feeling, like another milestone.
Well, more milestones were to come 1 year later in 2018. More success this time outside of Poland, winning the Ukraine Open and the Kiev Masters, and on back-to-back days as well. What do you remember about that weekend?
Well, again, fantastic thing. And the same year I was also in the final of Vilnius Open. So, but the Ukraine Open, great venue, great people. It's a bit emotional moment because we all know what's going on now in Ukraine. So for me, Ukraine was always a happy place, and I was going to the tournament there earlier, even before this Ukraine Open that I won. So I know the guys, and I wish you guys all the best if you're listening, and I hope we will be playing pretty much soon together. So yeah. Great tournament. The first international and win. It's always amazing feeling. It's even hard to describe really. But these are those moments when, as I mentioned before, when everything seems to be right. The flow. That's the name of the state of mind that we are looking for in that. The flow. You just go and everything happens instantly, and that was one of the moments, and I'm happy it lasted for the whole weekend, so I was able to take 2 international titles, which is always great.
Well, away from playing yourself, we saw you very busy working as a darts coach, and you help train other players. You run a program called Smart Darts Training. Tell us more about that.
Well, yes, I decided at one point that apart from developing myself, I would like to do my best and develop others. There is also a smart idea behind it, because I deeply believe that if people around me get better, I can get better as well. So it always works both ways. So this is my motivation for that. Every session for me is a session in which I learn and I teach. It works both ways. So that is my basic motivation. And yeah, coaching is fun. I was always not happy when I heard people advising each other like you have to play as much as you can. That's the advice that people usually would get when they ask, what shall I do? How shall I train? And I had background in light athletics. I trained running with great coach, Pavel Hoffman here, and he was teaching us also about training itself, why we are doing the things, how we can divide it, how we can describe it. For me it was important, because if you compare, for example, darts to running, there is comparison, because you have people that jog, they just go and run, right? Like take darts and play, that's the one approach, and the other is let's do the professional training. Let's try to figure out what can help you best, what kind of training you should use, and what can build your game and stamina, let's say. So seeing all that, I decided that I would like to help out and tell more about how the coaching might be organized. I studied a lot, and I still do other disciplines like shooting, like archery, everything that I can use and implement to darts. I'm also very much interested in neurobiology, how our brain works, and how we can use this stuff to learn and to have more effective sessions. And it all works. It's all measured now. It's amazing how science helps us, how we can use all that in our advantage right now. So that's generally my approach. Of course, my playing is my priority. So coaching is my serious side project, if you can call it that. But I'm concentrating on myself and also trying to help others as much as I can.
We'll come back to your playing in a moment. When we think of a young Polish talent coming through in darts, though, we obviously think of Sebastian Białecki, surely a PDC tour card holder for the future. But can you give us any other names that we should be keeping an eye on?
Well, I could, but they're tongue twisters for non-Polish speakers. Of course, I can mention a few names, and I'm sure you will hear about guys. But I also. You must know that there are really a lot of young players right now. Like there are tournaments dedicated to young players, and there are like 40 of them playing. So like for Polish standards, it's really a lot. And we have now youngsters like 14, 15, 16 years old already dominating local tournaments, which is also great to see. Like in different regions of Poland, it's happening. So we have like, I can mention the guys that I know that I worked with on the way, more or less. So Janek Naczyński here in Warsaw, Kazik Pawłowski in Gdańsk, there is Franek Kalinka in Krakow. Also a few weeks ago I did a workshop in Krakow organized by Krakow Darts organization. So, and there were 14 youngsters there, like age from 10 to 20, and they were all so concentrated, so much listening, practicing. I saw this energy in them. They really want to play, and they treat it seriously. And trust me, when I'm standing next to the youngster like that, like let's say 15-year-old, and I see the energy in his throw, the rhythm, it's amazing how guys, how quickly they are catching up and seeing what is important in game. In times when I was starting, we didn't have YouTube, we haven't had hardly internet. There was any only watch like 5 seconds long mute films of Andy Fordham or that Hanky throwing, and I was trying to figure out the technique from those films. Now you just go to the YouTube and you can see, and your eyes are taking it and your brain is taking it, and it's easier, I believe, for youngsters to start. And they have great role models, of course, and examples of what Leicester did last time, recently, what we've been doing. It's amazing and giving a lot of imagination to every one of us, including youngsters. So great time ahead for darts, I believe.
Yeah, it sounds like a bright future for Polish darts. And looking ahead to the future, we touched on the crowd for this weekend, the World Series. Potentially 12,000 fans are going to be watching, so there's obviously an appetite to watch darts in Poland as well. But what would you like to see next? A Premier League night in Poland, a Euro Tour, a major? What's next?
If you ask me, I would prefer personally European Tour, because I do think it would be also great for the players, for our pack to catch up a little bit, to get more qualifying spots. So I would I will be looking into this direction. It's too early for Premier League, I suppose, yet. We must look wider, like on the whole picture. I don't know how would it fit generally, and the whole concept. But definitely there is space for European Tour in Poland as well. I think Czech Republic have one, Hungarians have one. I think that Poland is another step naturally, especially that we can see this amazing energy during World Series. So it's a great thing that PTC have been doing by starting with this World Series thing and checking the things out, and now it's time for the next step, and I hope it will be European Tour, not long from now. Yeah.
We shall see. Well, lastly, back to you. What are your long-term goals in terms of playing? We saw you play Q School at the start of this year. Where would you like to take your own darts game?
Yeah, Q School was not this year. I struggled at Q School. That was a hard moment for me, like training-wise, but I'm still learning, observing. Like a few days ago, we played qualifiers to the European Tours, and then I was satisfied with my game. So I'm like, to answer this question, after I played on stage during World Series, my simple goal, like a big goal, is just to play on stage as frequently as possible. Because the first time I got backstage to train before the tournament, my first thought was, I want to be here more often. I want to see this more often. I want to feel this more often. And also the way I played on stage made me believe that it's a good moment. So I'm not setting myself any particular goals, like result-wise. I'm looking at my game from the more behavioral perspective. So I'm working on my throw, on different aspects of my game that help me concentrate during the game. And I'm not thinking about the result. But being on stage, for sure, that would be a nice element, and I will do everything I can to do it. So, including, of course, Q School next year and other things that might be happening.
Well, Lukasz, it's a pleasure to get you on the show. We appreciate you taking the time, and we wish you all the best for what else is to come in 2024.
Alex, thank you very much. Wish you all the best as well. It was great to talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks again to Lukasz for joining us. Moving things on, we're going to be looking back now at the Pro Tour action this week in Hildesheim. We had 2 Players' Championship events. Wednesday's event, it was won by the UK Open champion Dimitri van den Berg, beating Matt Campbell in the final. But we're going to focus on Tuesday's event, where we saw another new first-time winner on the Pro Tour this year, Alan Soutar, picking up his first PDC title, beating the man formerly known as the handicapper's nightmare, Daryl Gurney, 8-7 in the final. But what does this win mean for Soutar and the rest of his season going forward?
Well, I do want to comment a bit quickly on that Matt Campbell thing, because we talked about it when he won the North American Darts Championship a couple weeks ago, and I mentioned just how much above his seasonal performance he was across those 3 matches on the Saturday evening, your time, Saturday afternoon, my time. It showed that he took the world of confidence out of that. He still has a lot of work to do to get to the World Championships because of how poor he was over the first 5 Players' Championship midweeks and the Euro Tour qualifiers. But he's put himself in that conversation now, and he's probably playing better than most of the other people in that conversation. So that was really, really good to see for Matt Campbell, because he is a top 64 player. He just hadn't looked anything like it over the first few months of the year. But as far as Alan Soutar goes, I mean, what doesn't it do for his year? You know, when the day started, he was in the World Championship spots, but only just barely. He was nowhere near qualifying for anything else other than Minehead. Where does he leave it? He's almost assured of the World Championships. I think £30,000 is a good guess of what you're going to need to do to get to the World Championships. He's at 29,000. So, I mean, sure, he could lose every match the remainder of the year, but being that he's at least this past weekend in the seeds and very well will be in the seeds again, you think he's going to steal one win over the last 18 Players' Championship events, maybe even 2. So a spot in the World Championships after missing it last year is almost a given at this point, if it's not already a given. He's going to get to Minehead. He's in the race for Leicester out of nowhere. Even though this isn't going to get him to the World Matchplay, he would have needed to win the title again the following day, and even that wouldn't have been quite enough yet to get him into Blackpool. But he's gotten himself in that race for Leicester, and we go back 18 months ago through the second World Championship appearance and the second consecutive time that he made a name for himself. We both talked about how, he just snuck into the World Championships, and, he got into the top 32 from his runs in the World Championships, but we hadn't seen anything from him on the floor. He was obviously a gifted player on the stage, but he was always inconsistent on the floor and never doing enough to really challenge getting into to get to the latter stages of the Pro Tour events, but as a result, also not challenging to get into the big majors. Now he's won a title, and he's also made a semifinal this year, and he's playing probably the best darts certainly the best darts we've ever seen from him on the floor, but possibly the best darts we've ever seen from him, regardless of competition. All 7 matches that he had en route to the title were above his seasonal average, which is now up to just under 93. He's up to 45th so far this year. And he had some really good wins along the way, beating informed players in Danny Noppert and Richie Edhouse. I mean, Neil Zonneveld, also an informed player. Daryl Gurney has been a bit inconsistent with form, but has been playing fairly well this year, and he beat all of them. And he beat a player in Dirk van Dijvenbode who seems like, we talked about injuries, after dealing with a boatload of them, seems like he's finally starting to get it back towards his best self. And he beat him to 0 in the semifinal. This obviously takes a lot of the pressure off of Alan Soutar, because now the question isn't, can he make the World Championship? It's, what else can he make? He still, has work to do to make sure he keeps his tour card. He's probably going to need another £15,000 in addition to the qualification money that he's going to get from the World Championships and the Players' Championship finals, maybe even a little more on top of that. Obviously, if he can get to Leicester, that will be enough, because getting to Leicester would mean he's probably won another £20,000 over the rest of the next few months on the Pro Tour. But a lot of the pressure is gone. He's now in a very good position to not just save his tour card, but maybe even start moving up the rankings. And because he's not going to be defending much next year, that probably means he's bought himself 2 more years. It's still, we can't say that yet, but that's almost what this title did. And it's good to see, because he's fun to watch when he's playing well.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. I was going to say a lot of what you just said there is a massive win for Alan Soutar, and sometimes we see players win a title. It might be their first, like it was for Suits this week, or they might have won a title after a long time without one, but there can almost be an instant payoff. I think back to Jamie Hughes when he won the Euro Tour in Prague, it snuck him into the match play just before the cut-off, and we see players, they gain that almost instant payoff from winning a title on the Pro Tour. And with Alan Soutar, it's unlikely this title is going to lead to him getting to the match play in the summer. He's going to have to win another title or get to 2 finals potentially in these last 2 Players' Championships before that cut-off. But I think for Suits, this title, it's the long-term benefits it could have for him going forward. And you mentioned that race to the World Grand Prix. He's in that last spot now, and I think go back a week, it wouldn't have been on his radar. His goal for this year was to keep hold of his tour card, get back to the World Championships, and he admitted himself 2023 it was a disaster for him, missing out on the Worlds, the Players' Championship finals, 2 events where if you miss them 2 years in a row, it can potentially be disastrous for your tour card. You can afford to miss them 1 year and bounce back the following year, which it looks like Alan Soutar is going to do here. But we see players do that quite often, don't we? They miss out on those 2 big events, come back the following year, get back in them, and all of a sudden they're not thinking about keeping their tour card there, looking to push up the rankings again. But I think there would have been some pressure on Suits this year to produce the goods, to get back to Ali Pali, get the results he needed to keep his tour card. And this title, well, that's gone above and beyond doing that, hasn't it? He's going to be at Ali Pali, he's going to be at Minehead, barring a complete fall off, and he's going to have his tour card again for next year. And now it is about building on it and seeing how much he can get from it, how much he can squeeze out of this win off the back of it, and maybe make the World Grand Prix, who knows. But I don't think that's the be-all and end-all for him. It would be an achievement, wouldn't it, to get to the World Grand Prix. That and the match play are 2 of the hardest events to qualify for, and Suits is right in the mix for one of them now. And I just want to finish up by touching on Alan Soutar's performances on that run to the title on Tuesday. A 98 average for the day across 7 games is world class. And I think back to the first round, I was having a look earlier, and I don't think this game was on the stream, but what a game he had with Steve Beaton in that first round. Beaton a 130 finish in the first leg, Alan Soutar a 12 darter, Steve Beaton an 11 darter, a 1-2-2 finish to go 5-3 up. Suits holds in 15 darts. He finds a break in the 10th leg and holds again in that last leg to win it 6-5. So a comeback in the first round before he even got started. And later on against Richie Edhouse, who had 1-2-1 and 1-6-4 finishes to go 4-2 up. Suits a 1-1-3, a 1-2-1 and a 13 darter to break and win it 6-4 with a 107 average, and 7-0 against Dirk van Dijvenbode in the semi-finals, the 102 average in the final. That last leg, when the chips are down, kicks off 180, holds in 11 darts. If we're doing a leg of the year, okay, 9 darters are probably going to win it every year, but that's going to be a real contender, isn't it? It was astonishing stuff, and a well-deserved title, which has given him a boost now to maybe kick on again in the PDC and reach some new heights.
Well, we've talked about the World Series. We've talked about the Challenge Tour. We've talked about the Players' Championship events. Let's now talk about the Women's Series and the Women's World Match Play, as the cutoff for the Women's World Match Play falls this weekend. 4 events to go. Currently, the last couple spots being held by Anastasia Abramova and Katie Sheldon. But how do you see the weekend playing out in Wigan?
Yeah, it's a really exciting weekend ahead, isn't it? And I think great for the ladies as well. I was just looking at the schedule for this weekend, that on that Sunday, the last 2 events before the cut-off, we haven't got a Euro Tour going on at the same time. Sometimes we see these Women's Series events, they clash with other events being put on by the PDC. But for darts fans, you're going to have both eyes on the Women's Series on Sunday, and probably for most of Saturday as well, because you have got the World Series going on in the evening. But I expect to see a lot of people watching the Women's Series this weekend to see how that race plays out. And just looking at where it stands at the moment, I know it's not mathematically confirmed yet for some of these players, but I think looking at that order merit, the race to Blackpool, we've got realistically 2 spots still up for grabs. I think Bo Greaves, the defending champion, Fallon Sherrock, the 2022 winner, so both the former champions of this event, they're going to be there. Mikuru Suzuki, Lisa Ashton, Noah Lynn van Leuven. Not the first time you're going to hear me mention them on the show, but the Blackpool B&B, they're going to be booked up already for those 5 players. And Rhiannon O'Sullivan in 6th, £2,300 ahead of 9th place. I think I'd be confident in saying that she's going to be there as well, barring a weekend where we see maybe 2 or 3 of those players right behind her win titles. But that leaves the 2 players that you mentioned there, Anastasia Abramova, Katie Sheldon, who you're going to hear from in a moment. They occupy those last 2 spots, and there's quite a pool of players just behind them, isn't there? Natalie Gilbert, Robin Byrne, Eileen de Graaf, Lorraine Hyde and Aoife McCormack for Gilbert. It's a last 16. She's behind Byrne and de Graaf at a quarter-final, and Hyde and McCormack a semi-final. And there's more players behind them as well that are going to be going into this weekend still believing that they can make a late push for that top 8 and get to the Winter Gardens. And a couple of players I mentioned that could be in the mix. We did have her on the show as a guest recently, and she's only just started playing on the Women's Series this year, so she's missed half the events during the qualifying period. But Gemma Hayter, she's in the top 5 of the averages this year. She's made 2 semi-finals in those first 2 weekends of the year. It may prove to be too late for her this time round, but if she goes and make a final and a semi-final in that first day, doesn't even need to win a title, that could take her into that Sunday right in contention. And Kirsi Vinnakainen, 6th on the averages, just below Gemma Hayter. Had to double check this actually, but the last Women's Series weekend, she went home empty-handed. That despite posting a 96 average in one game, losing to Bo Greaves in that one, but didn't bank any money from those last 4 events. And that could be crucial in the end in her missing out. But we have seen her put together multiple runs on a weekend, like a quarter-final and a semi-final. So she's got the game to really make a last-minute push. And, okay, £1,100 behind right now, but it wouldn't surprise me at all going into that last event on Sunday if she is in the spots or just outside them.
Yeah, you discussed a few of the people I was gonna. I mean, Vinnakainen only has herself to blame. Lost 2 winnable matches on the first day last weekend against the last weekend they played. I meant against Anka Zylstra. Okay, you can never complain about losing to Bo Greaves, even if you end up averaging 96.5 in that match. But some of those other matches are matches that Vinnakainen would have thought she could have and should have won. And she's already beaten Bo Greaves earlier this year as well. But I think she has the game and she keeps getting better. Even if this is not going to be her year to qualify, I think she's one of those players who is on the up unquestionably. A big weekend, even if it's not enough to get her there this time, will give her confidence for the rest of the year. And hopefully for her sake, she can rebound. But I'll mention a few other players, also in the top 10 in average this year, but not currently in a spot and still within striking distance. Dita Hedman is only 1,100 pounds back. You mentioned Aline de Graaf. She's only 300 pounds back. They're both in the top 10 in averages. But there's, some other players who have been around and are good enough to win a title if things go their way. Kirsty Hutchinson, Maria O'Brien, Lorraine Winstanley, all players who we've seen so much more from. Laura Turner as well, who's qualified for this the first year, but they just haven't played at their best. And especially since, you look down the list, Anastasia Bramislova is currently 33rd in averages. She's not been playing all that well so far this year, but she's been finding ways to win matches. She's been finding ways to do enough. She's won 12 matches so far this year. She's made a quarterfinal. And that makes the difference, is winning even if you're not playing anywhere near the game that you can play. But it also means that the Bramislova spot is in jeopardy if she doesn't up her game from that. I think it's going to be, at least hopefully will be an interesting weekend. Bo Greaves seems to be moving back in the right direction, but Fallon Sherrick is also, and Lisa Ashton is also, and Noah Lynn Van Leuven has obviously been one of the breakout stars this year. You could see a weekend where Bo Greaves plays well and only wins one of the 4 events, and we have 4 different champions. I don't think that's the way it's going to play out. I think someone's going to win 2. I'm not sure who. I think someone's going to win 2 of them, and it might just be Fallon Sherrick. It might just be Makura Suzuki. It could, of course, be Bo Greaves, but I think we're going to have 3 champions over the course of the weekend, and 2 of them will be the same person. I'm not going to predict who that is, though.
Well, we'll have to hang tight to find out the answer to that. We're going to finish up with the mailbag in a moment, but before we do, let's bring in a player that is going to be right in the mix for that race to the Women's World Match Play this weekend. She's a 2-time finalist on the Women's Series. Here's our chat with Katie Sheldon. I'm pleased to say we're joined by the 2-time Women's Series finalist, Katie Sheldon. Thanks for the time again, Katie. How are you doing?
I'm good, Alex. Thanks so much for having me on.
Great to have you back on, and we're talking just a few days before you make what is probably now a familiar trip to Wigan for the Women's Series, the last weekend of events before the cut-off for the Women's World Match Play, and lots to play for. How are you feeling ahead of this weekend?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. Obviously, I've been having a lot of practice. There's a lot of darts been on at the minute, so look, hopefully I won't look too much into it. If it happens, it happens. won't be putting too much pressure on myself looking at results and things like that. Just going to go in and enjoy it and hopefully get results I need.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, because we know as players you want to get results every weekend, and every weekend is important, but does this upcoming one feel bigger just because it is going to be that last one before the cut-off?
Yeah, of course. Obviously you want to do your best to qualify, and I think everyone in the room will know, what they need to do, and that's what I say. I just have to worry about myself this weekend, and if I do what I can do, well then hopefully I can qualify.
Definitely. Well, we'll come back to this year later, but let's first rewind back to when we last had you on the show. You were chatting with our producer Hannah in Blackpool ahead of playing in that first Women's World Matchplay. Just 18 years old at the time, you were one of the youngest to ever play on the Winter Garden stage. What was that whole experience like?
Yeah, that was a great little weekend. I know it was only one day, but we had travelled over the few days before and went and watched the semi-finals and things like that of the main event. So it was an absolute brilliant experience for me, because I'd obviously been to watch darts, but I'd never been like backstage or anything like that. So to really soak it up was amazing, and it pushes you to want to go back, and that's the main goal, is getting back to that.
And on your way to qualifying, I remember that 1-2-2 you had on the ball to beat Fallon Sherrick to make your first final on the Women's Series. But if you had to choose, what was better, that 1-2-2 or the 74 and 86 finishes when you played Fallon at the match play?
The only thing with the 74 was it was nearly in the treble 20. No, the 1-2-2, like shots like that are just so important and so crucial, aren't they, for like getting through. And I think the last day of qualifying to get through, I kind of just done what I needed to. I think I had my highest recorded average in the PDC as well that day, so getting through was massive. But obviously playing on the stage, not like I got up there and lost 4-0. I kind of gave a good account to myself, but obviously you want to get back, play better, and hopefully pick up a winning result.
And just before the match play, there was another big moment for you at the Six Nations, hitting that winning double to secure the title for Ireland, and against Lorraine Winstanley, somewhat of a mentor for you with target. What did that moment mean to you at the time?
Yeah, it was brilliant. That was my first kind of senior event playing for Ireland. So I kind of wanted to get in and, play my best. And when you're going in last, you're kind of saying to yourself, well, there's no other option other than winning. And I had missed 3 darts before, and I said, oh no, don't do this. Eventually the double went in, and I was just delighted, because as a team, like, we're so passionate about what we do when we go away, and we really get into it. So to come away with a win was just massive.
Well, let's fast forward to 2023, and another new experience for you was playing at Q School for the first time. What did you take away from that week in Milton Keynes?
Yeah, so I had gotten the PDC at the end of the calendar year kindly offered the ladies I think it was the top 8 a free spot in Q School or whatever, and I just said I would take it, because you never know when another experience like that or an opportunity could come along. So I said I would take it, and I have to say it's an eye-opener really, about how good the standard really is. And even still, the standard is just grown and grown. Like, even you watch Q School this year compared to last year, like, it's just mad. So it was an eye-opener really to say, well, when you go back, that's kind of the standard you need to be at. But I enjoyed it because it showed kind of where you need to be at, and but I really enjoyed it. I think it's good to pick up these experiences as you go along, because when you do feel like you're ready to go, you'll know what to expect.
Well, last year it ended up being a much changed lineup for the Women's World Matchplay. I think only 3 players from the first year making it to 2023's event. Your Irish teammate Robin Burns, she made it to the semi-finals. For you, what was it like watching it and missing out last year?
Yeah, obviously it was disappointing for myself to miss out, but Robin was fantastic. Robin, that 95 was huge, and she played absolutely fantastic on the stage. She just got up there and does what she does. So fair play to Robin, because she got up there and done what she had to. But obviously you're disappointed. You want to be there as well, and all the ladies who qualified that year completely deserved to qualify. So I think it was a good tournament, and obviously all of us now who have been there the past 2 years want to get back.
And one of the highlights for you in 2023, though, it came in the WDF winning gold with Ireland in the World Cup team event. How special was that one to win? Because it is one of the big titles when it comes to tournaments playing for your country.
Yeah, it definitely was. And we got through the group and we got the draw of the Netherlands in the last 16. And normally you say to yourself, when you top a group, you know, the Netherlands are nearly a favourite to win it. And we were saying, well, we have them. I says, if we can do well here, you know, like nothing can stop us, you know, because they're such a good team that if you're beating good teams, we have it in us. And it was such a good game. And every game we played from the last 16 onwards, we were just so into it and so passionate about getting behind each other. And we've just got into it so much that when we got into the final, we said we'll give it our best shot. And thankfully, we won it, and it was a great week. It was a great week. Like we had so much fun, and we really, really enjoyed it. And I was sobbing after we won, but it was great. It was a great thing to win.
A great moment, and I know obviously playing for Ireland means a lot to you. That's a big part of your darts, the women's series as well. I think when we last spoke, you were just coming up to your last year in school. So what does a typical week look like for you now in terms of darts, and is there any work involved that you do now?
So I had missed out on my college course by 3 points, which was quite annoying because it's only 3 little points. But at the minute I'm just playing as much darts as I can, getting as much experience as I can, and then eventually when it comes to going to get a job or doing what needs to be done, I'll worry about that. But at the minute I'm just playing in as much darts as I can and getting around while I can, because you never know when all this will stop or when, you know, responsibilities come up. So I'm lucky enough that I have a good backing behind me and I'm able to do that.
Yeah, it's been a busy year already for you, and let's get on to this year, because what a start it was to the Women's Series, a semi-final and a final on the first day. How much confidence did those 2 runs give you going into the rest of the season?
Yeah, I felt really good going over, and when I got going the first day, I was just delighted because last year I just wasn't happening on the Women's Series for me, unfortunately, and that's where I put it down to. It's just consistency, really. Like one game you can play well, and then the next game it wasn't happening. So to get going and having consistent enough games, I was just genuinely happy with myself, and then I was getting into the latter stages of the tournament, and to have that sort of start for the start of the year kind of kicks you off for the rest of the year. So I'm looking forward to it. I love the Women's Series. Obviously I feel comfortable there. It's what I know best, because we're there so much. So I'm really looking forward to this weekend.
Good to hear. And you mentioned your game there. Obviously averages are only a guide. Last year you averaged 67 for the season on the Women's Series. So far this year you're 5 points up, 72 at the moment. Have you noticed your game has picked up? Have you been doing anything differently behind the scenes, putting in extra time on the board?
I think I'm just playing a lot at the minute, and obviously I'm playing a lot of men's tournaments as well, which helps. But I think it's just at the minute what I'm personally trying to do is just trying to get that consistency where I can constantly be at a decent level, like, because I know myself what I can do, but when you're not doing it, you know, it is frustrating. But that's down to me, you know. That's what I have to do. I have to put the work in. So to have gotten a decent run at the last one has really put kind of a stepping stone in place for the rest of the season.
And you said that you love playing in the Women's Series. When we last spoke, I remember us looking ahead to the Women's Series that would have 6 events in a weekend spread across 2 weekends. Now there's 24 events a season. You've been a regular on the Women's Series while it's grown over the years. What have you made of its progress during that time?
Yeah, it's been fantastic. I think you'd be mad not to support it, really. Just everything the PDC are trying to do to make it as best as they can for us. I'm kind of all on for it. You know, I think it's a fantastic tournament for the women. I love them. I feel so comfortable there, and you know what you have to do when you're over there. Like, there's no easy games. So if you go in and you don't play well, you're going to get bet. So I think it's the enjoyment of going over and being determined to play well, I think, is the thing. But they're amazing. Like, to have so many events for us is just brilliant.
And we'll finish up by getting back to this upcoming weekend. You're in that 8th and final spot for the match play with 4 events to go. Does it help having had that experience from 2 years ago of being right in that race for qualifying for Blackpool?
Yeah, exactly. And I think obviously you know a lot of the ladies as well, you know what they're capable of, so you know when you get in there you have to play well. So I'm looking forward to the challenge, and look, hopefully it goes well, and I'm feeling good, so hopefully it does go.
And that cut off from 2 years ago, I think you were £100 ahead going into the last event, and you mentioned it earlier, your best ever average in the PDC. You had a 95 average in one game early on. You had a good run in that event as well with the pressure on. What do you remember about that last event and that final push to get to the match play?
I remember just people kept saying to me, "Oh, I think you'll get in." I says, I'm not saying I don't really want to know. I says, I'm just going to keep playing, and until I get knocked out, then I'll kind of worry. And I just remember being so dead focused on getting the wins, and thankfully it worked. So I'm going to go in with the same sort of mindset this weekend, just make sure I keep getting them wins and won't worry about kind of what anyone else is doing around me, just worry about myself and what I have to do, sort of thing.
That's a good plan. And lastly, looking beyond this weekend, what else have you got lined up for the rest of 2024? Obviously you're going to be hoping to book your Blackpool B&B after this weekend, but anything else you've got in the diary already darts wise after that?
So Six Nations is next weekend. That's being held in Ireland, which is nice. There's no flights or anything, we can just have a drive down. So I'm looking forward to that. And then obviously there's the Europe Cup in Slovakia this year, and obviously just Irish rankings, trying to qualify back for the Irish team, Development Tour, Women's Series, so all them sort of stuff.
A busy time ahead. Well, Katie, it's always great to get you on the show. Do appreciate you giving us some of your time. Best of luck for this weekend, the Six Nations next week, and what else is to come in 2024 as well.
Thank you so much for having me on, I appreciate it.
Thanks again to Katie for joining us, and we'll finish up the show with the mailbag. We've got 2 questions from our listeners. The first one comes from George Dobson, who says, can Burton sing me happy birthday for tomorrow on the pod?
Absolutely I can. Absolutely not will I. And you heard me. I wanted to get through this question so quickly. I did the quickest countdown for us to restart that I've ever done on this show, because, yeah, I'll leave it at that. But I did message you, and I think George Dobson deserves to hear this. I did message you that we should add to our award show the most George Dobson-esque question of the year. I don't even know if this one wins, but it is definitely a very George Dobson-esque question, and one that I do wish you a very happy birthday, but you would have to upgrade to 4 levels above the highest level that we have on Patreon to get me to sing you happy birthday, and you would have to upgrade about 8 levels above that for me to do it on the podcast, and that goes to anyone. So if anyone wants to subscribe to pay us about £2,000 a month, we will sing you happy birthday on our podcast. That's, I think, the fair price, but you'd have to commit to an entire year's worth of paying that. Otherwise, can I? Yes. Will I? No.
Yeah, there's been some corkers in terms of questions from George this year. Keep them coming, and maybe we will have that new awards to add to the weekly Dartscast awards. And by the time you are listening to the show, it's already been George's birthday, so apologies, we are late in wishing you a happy birthday. Hope you had a good one, and thanks for the continued support and the questions as well. And Burton, he didn't sing for you. I'm not going to sing for you either, but if you do want to hear me sing, then you're going to have to venture to Bolton on the off chance that I am out on a Friday or a Saturday night, because they absolutely love the karaoke here in Bolton, and I'm partial to a bit of Proclaimers 500 Miles if you want to hear that. I haven't got my brother with me. He lives in Suffolk, so you've only got one of the Proclaimers, so you might hear that, or you might hear something else from me. So yeah, other than that, you're going to have to sign up to the Patreon $2,000 a month tier to get it sent over.
I was singing some Proclaimers myself at the last Darts tournament, but it went, I'm going to miss 500 doubles and I'm going to miss 500 more. And then I lost count before losing on double one after 60-something darts. But we have one more question. This comes from Big G180. Has the change in qualifying rules really changed the Euro Tour, or is the Pro Tour / Euro Tour still throwing up great games and stories, especially after Alan Soutar winning this past week?
Yeah, back to the serious stuff, I'm afraid, to finish off. And when the PDC dropped the news about the changes to the Euro Tour for this season, it was met with a a lot of disappointment from darts fans, and we were the same on this show. My opinion, we're about halfway through the season now. I wouldn't say it's changed completely, because I still feel for the players playing in those qualifiers that they've had their spots cut from 20 to 10, so a 50% cut is a big change. And getting to those Euro tours, gaining that stage experience for the lower ranked players, it can play a vital part in their development on the tour. But Euro Tour, yeah, it's still throwing up some great games, great stories. That we can say. Martin Schindler winning his first PDC title, Luke Littler's 2 titles, Luke Humphreys that 112 average, the 8-1 demolition of Michael van Gerwen in the final, the Cross Humphreys final recently, Josh Rock winning his first Euro Tour. So yeah, stories are still emerging, and on the floor as well, 12 different winners from the first 12 Players' Championship events. And I actually think that the Players' Championships, in a funny way, have grown in importance for the players lower down the rankings. I think they are doubling down on those now and really want to make the most of them, because there's extra prize money added to them now. That the first round, if you get a win, it is $1,000. There is 15 grand to the winner. The Euro Tour qualifiers, they might just seem like an added bonus now for some players, rather than right, we've got 20 spots here, there's a lot of spots on the line, let's try and get to these. It does feel more like a closed shop now, the Euro Tour, for those players in that bracket that I mentioned. So I think for them, it's focus on these Players' Championships. You're guaranteed money, however many games you win. You haven't got to win 2, 3, 4 games in the qualifiers to get a guaranteed paycheck. So I think the focus is the Players' Championships, and get the wins, get the money in the bank, and push up the Pro Tour rankings and get as high as you can. That's my take on it anyway. I could be completely wrong there, but I think it'd be good to get the views of a player who maybe was on the tour last year, the last few years, and is playing in these Euro Tour qualifiers this year, to see what they think of it. Because for me anyway, it does feel like that dynamic of the Pro Tour has shifted a little bit with these rule changes.
You're never completely wrong. You're usually just partially wrong. Don't worry. No, this time I don't think you're wrong at all, though. I understand where this question's coming from, because you can't argue that the quality of play hasn't increased on the Euro Tour this year. And some of that I think you have to admit is because you have a higher proportion of the players who are playing well. And not just the ones that are playing well. Even if they're not playing well, they're still among the best players in the world, and they have the game, because that's why they've gotten the top 16 overall, or are still near the top of the Pro Tour order of merit, because they have that game. Even if they're struggling right now, they can find it on a given day. So we've seen a lot more really, really good performances, because there are fewer players who are just winning a couple matches and qualifying who might otherwise have not qualified. But I still don't think it was the right call, because you still had some great matches on the Euro Tour, even when you were having random matches between 2 qualifiers who might not have qualified this year. And people were still going and watching. People were still selling out pretty much all of maybe not Friday afternoon, but the rest of the weekends are coming close to selling them out. And I don't think guaranteeing that you're going to have a bit more of the top name players there is going to make that much of a difference. It's still spots that have taken away from the players that you mentioned who are up and coming, players who need to get that big stage experience to become the stars of tomorrow. Those spots are harder to come by because there are fewer spots for the qualifiers. So while I think you can't deny that overall the quality has increased, I don't think it has increased enough to counteract the drawbacks. So I still don't like the change, but I think that was a great point you made, that it has led to these players prioritizing the floor events in ways they haven't before. And we've now seen 12 events, 12 different winners, but also some first-time winners like Alan Soutar, who maybe would have been focusing more on the Euro Tour qualifiers when they had twice as many spots to compete for. Anything else for this week?
Well, we've got to say thank you to our guests for joining us, to Lukasz and Katie for their time. Thank you to our sponsors, to Darts Corner, Condor Darts and Quiff. Remember, Darts Corner and Condor Darts, they're the places to go for all your darts equipment. Links in the description. And if you fancy a flutter on the darts, maybe the World Series this weekend, head on over to Quiff, download the app or go to their website. There's a chance to supercharge your odds with Quiff. And remember, 18 plus, T's and C's apply. Please gamble responsibly and begambleaware.org. And lastly, thank you to everyone for listening. We appreciate the support as always. I was going to say we'll be back next week, but as you mentioned earlier, Burton, you're not going to be here next week. So we have got a guest co-host stepping in for Burton. Do get in touch, though, if you can guess who you think it could be. Anyone who gets it right will get our guest co-host next week to give you a shout out on the show. But until then, only one thing left to do, and that is to enjoy the darts.
We're not going to make them guess where I'm going to be either.
Yeah, we'll do that as well. Anyone who can guess that, you get a shout out as well. So you've got 2 chances to get your name mentioned.
All right, I'll have to not post on Facebook until after we record next week. So let me know when we record, then I'll post pictures of wherever I am. If I even do, I almost never post on Facebook. But yeah, so you'll be back next week with our special guest co-host. I'll be back in a few weeks at the start of July. So I won't steal any of the thunder. I'm sure everything will have changed by the time I get back. I think Mark Walsh will have been given a tour card to replace Adrian Lewis by then, and Coach Stompe will have won through the Challenge Tour because they're going to schedule a last-minute weekend, and he's going to win all 5 events. So he'll be in every event as well. So the world will be a much better place when I get back in July. You just have to enjoy a little darts in the meantime and hang tight until that happens.